You are listening to the Done with Dieting podcast, episode number 12. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Sherman, former corporate high-tech executive turned life and weight loss coach. But it doesn't seem like it was that long ago that I was searching for that perfect diet. You know, the one that would finally be the magic pill to lose the weight that I so desired. Fast forward past tons of failed diets, endless hours of exercise, and painful lessons learned. And although I still have not reached the state of nirvana body love bliss that I truly desire, my relationship with food, exercise, and my body is infinitely better than it was not only when I started this journey, but even as recently as 3 years ago. This journey has allowed me to ditch my scale, stop logging my food and exercise, eat food that wasn't prepared by me, and I can easily maintain my weight, something that I never thought was possible. I created the Done with Dieting podcast to give you simple, easy to do, and sustainable strategies and ideas to help you do the exact same thing without all of the drama that I went through. If you're a woman who's looking to create a better relationship with food, exercise, and her body, get off the diet roller coaster and free up all of that headspace spent on calories, how you look, what you should eat, and beating yourself up for not doing what you think you should be doing, you are in the right place. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today I want to introduce a topic called B- habits. It's an idea that I recently introduced to a few of my clients, and although there was certainly pushback, I think it's an approach that works well for health because it allows us to lean into being healthier without all the overwhelm that goes along with having to do it all. And of course, then the inevitable fallout that occurs when we inevitably fail, as we make the failure mean that we are incapable of doing the things that we want. So there's a concept for people who create things. Things like courses, presentations, as well as writers, artists, musicians, and those types of things. And that's the concept of B- work. And what B- work states is that at some point, good enough is good enough, and that we can't aim for perfection because when we do, what we're trying to create will never be good enough, and so therefore, it will never be created and allowed out into the world. The foundation of B- work is that perfection is the enemy of good enough, and so therefore, doing something that's good enough is at least going to get it out into the world and get it into people's hands where they can enjoy it. And it doesn't need to be perfect, that we can always go back and make changes to it, but at least it's done, because otherwise we're going to spend tons of time making revisions after revisions after revisions. And so I started thinking about how we could use this same concept when it comes to our health and our own habits and our own eating or exercise, right? I was talking to a client of mine, and she was kind of not really complaining about the fact that she's an all or nothing type of person. And I use the word complaining because it was as if she was just stating a fact. She was like, I'm an all or nothing person. And she knew that having this way of thinking about her diet and exercise habit wasn't necessarily serving her, and that she didn't really enjoy being all or nothing, because she could see that being an all or nothing type of person and needing her diet to be perfect was completely getting in her way. And I don't think that she's alone. I think that many of us view ourselves as being this way. We view ourselves as being all in or totally out, right? We see this all the time when we're talking about New Year's resolutions, that people go all in at the beginning of the year, and then they decide that this is the year that they're going to get in shape, or this is the year that they're going to go vegetarian, or they're going to lose all of the weight. And so they feel like they need to go all in on January 1st or January 2nd, and they completely overhaul their lives versus taking a more stepped or leaning in approach. Meanwhile, their experience up until that point has been very different. Maybe they have been identifying as a couch potato, or they eat a lot of fast food. And so when they completely change everything, that's what's happening. It's that they're creating a very uncomfortable experience for their behavior change. Now, we know that when it comes to changing our habits, that small incremental changes, those things that are easy to do, those things that are sustainable, and those things that add up are the ticket to lifelong success. And that if we completely overhaul our lives and do everything that is completely different than what we're used to, that it will be really difficult for us to sustain those changes. Most of the time when I coach my clients in changing their behavior, one of the things that I really like to suggest is that we simplify what it is that we're focusing on, also known as constraint, meaning that if we want to become more fit through exercise, and we also want to improve our diet, and we also want to get a hold of our sleep, that we don't do all of those things at the same time. And instead, what we want to do is we want to choose to focus on one of those areas. When we get that one area under control, then we can move on to the next thing. And then when we get that next thing under control, then we can move on to the third, slowly picking at what's called the low-hanging fruit, those things that are easy to do. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't go back to the first thing again, that has to be perfect before you move on to the next area, but that we don't want to tackle all of the areas of our health or all of the areas of our life at the exact same time, because it becomes too overwhelming. There's a really good analogy of if we're on one side of a soccer field and we have 5 soccer balls and we want to get those soccer balls into the goal on the other side of the field, that we don't want to kick one of the soccer balls and then the next one and then the next one and then the next one. What we want to do is we want to get one of those balls into the goal and then come back for the next one. And so that's kind of the idea around constraint, is focusing on one area at a time so that you feel like you're gaining progress, so that you feel like you're actually getting somewhere. Because when we think that we need to do it all perfectly, when we don't do any of it perfectly, then we throw up our hands and we give up and we go right back to what we were doing before, which is the opposite of perfect, right? And I think that there are a couple different problems that we encounter when we want to change our health behaviors. And they're all pretty similar, but they're also a little bit different. They're pretty nuanced. Now, the first problem that I see is when we think that there's a right way of doing it. Don't we all do that? We think that there's a right way of losing weight and that someone else has the secret. We just need to learn what that thing is, and we believe that someone else has the answer. Some guru or expert, maybe you think I have the answer, and that we're going to F it up or that we're doing it wrong, and that there's a right way of getting from point A to point B, and that we have to do it the right way or else. Or else what? I'm not really sure, but we all think this way, don't we? Maybe we think it's going to take longer, or that other people are going to talk about us or judge us. I don't know. The second problem that we tend towards is what I talked about before, which is all or nothing thinking, which means that we go all in, and if we're not all in, then we're completely all out. So we're either on protocol or we're completely off protocol. And the problem with this is that when we go all in, we can totally get burned out because everything that we're used to is completely different. There's nothing that's comfortable. We're eating different foods. Our sleep habits are different. We're getting up at different times. We're moving differently. Maybe we're used to sitting on the couch, and so now we're moving a lot more, and it's all so super uncomfortable. And when it's uncomfortable, then we don't want to do the things that we're supposed to do. Eventually, we decide that we're not going to do those things anymore. Now, the language that we use to describe this type of behavior is the inevitable, I'm on the wagon, or I fell off the wagon, not realizing that here's a secret. There is no wagon. Now, the third problem that we have when it comes to changing our health is that we think we need to do it perfectly. And this goes along with the other two, the all or nothing thinking and that there's a right way to do things, right? We feel like, well, what's the point of doing it if I can't execute it perfectly? And so if we're not doing it perfectly, why even try? Or that doing it perfectly means that there's some sort of right way of doing it. And so anything less than perfect isn't good enough. Now, this is something that totally resonates with me because When I think back to when I was a teenager and looking through 17 magazine, when I didn't see the bodies that looked like mine, I kind of gave up. I was like, well, I can't possibly look like that, so why even try? I had this same all or nothing thinking, like my body couldn't possibly ever look like the bodies that I see in magazines, so why even try? So comparison for sure is at play here. And how often do we do that with ourselves? That we look at other people's plates and we think they must know something that we don't. That they for sure are doing it the right way, or at least they're doing better than we are. It's so funny to think about that, right? That we look at other women who maybe we know or maybe we don't, and we decide that because they have the body shape that maybe we desire, that they don't struggle with their weight, that everything seems very easy for other people, not realizing that they're probably going through a lot of the same things that we are. And so we kind of feel defeated after we decide that we're not doing it right. And so all of these problems, the all or nothing thinking that there's a right way of doing it, and thinking that we need to do it perfectly, they're all keeping us stuck because they don't allow for mistakes. And we know that when we're doing something new, there are going to be mistakes. I mean, mistakes are part of the process. Not making mistakes actually means that we're not growing. And we don't have to make mistakes mean anything about our ability to be successful or anything about us or what we want to accomplish. And so there's no such thing as doing it the right way. There's no such thing as perfection because we're all human, and therefore we are all completely flawed. And the all or nothing thinking it's just too rigid, right? So, as a solution to these problems, I want to introduce you to the concept of B- habits. Now, the idea behind B- habits is that we don't have to do it perfectly, but that we're doing just enough to be better than we were yesterday. In other words, what is it that you can do today that is going to move the needle a little bit closer to where you want to go? Maybe it's something simple, like drinking another glass of water, or eating another serving of vegetables, or going out for a 5-minute walk. What's one super stupid, simple thing that you can do today that will get you closer to where you want to go? And I think it's important to note here that we do not need to do a lot to become healthier. We humans tend to make things way more difficult than they should be. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than you were yesterday. See, because we always think that when we're setting goals for ourselves, that the person we're going to be tomorrow or next week or next month is this amazing, perfect person, right? We have this idea that future Elizabeth, the Elizabeth that I'm going to be tomorrow, is going to want to eat vegetables when today I just want to eat French fries. That the version of myself tomorrow or next week is going to want to run when today I can barely walk a mile. And so what if we set our goals for tomorrow and the next week and the next month, knowing that we're not going to live up to the perfectionistic fantasy that we think that we're going to be? But what if the person that we're going to be tomorrow or the next day or next week or next month is going to be pretty freaking close to the person that we are today? And so why wouldn't we want to set ourselves up for success? Why wouldn't we want to be successful in the future? And I don't think that the answer to that is that we don't want to be successful in the future. I think that we think that the things that we've set out for ourselves to do seem so simple and that we should be able to do them, that other people are doing it, and so we should be able to do it, or that we used to be able to do it before and we should be able to do it again. Far too often, we look back at the version of ourselves that did this before, right? Many of us have been active before, but now we've been out of practice. And we look back at the version of ourselves that did that thing before, whether she was organized and prepped her meals or whether she was able to run a mile. And we don't feel like we're that much of a different person. But if we're out of practice of the habit, if we're not doing the things that we want to be doing and we haven't been doing them for a while, we need to give ourselves a little bit of grace. And getting back into the swing of things can take a little bit of time. And so having some compassion for ourselves can really go a long way in terms of setting ourselves up for success. And therefore, feeling good about ourselves in the future and what we've accomplished. Now, you may automatically be thinking something like, oh, Elizabeth, B- work isn't going to work for me. And in fact, when I've presented this idea to my clients in the past, that's often the response I get. A few months ago, I was working with a client who wanted to improve her nutrition. And like many of my clients, she didn't have a ton of time. She worked a lot of hours. And as a result, her meal planning and preparation is the piece of her life that really suffered. And so at this point, she was eating a lot of convenience foods, like restaurant food. She would run over to a pizza place that was really near her and order pizza instead of salad, even though we had talked about that. So we started talking about other options that might get her a little bit closer. One of the options I suggested was packing a sandwich, that a sandwich was surely going to be healthier for her than ordering pizza at the place next door. And what was shocking about that was that she objected to eating lunch meat because it has so many chemicals in it, and she knows it's not good for us. And so it kind of made me laugh because I remember there was a period of time when I thought that bananas weren't great. I was like, oh, bananas are bad. Bananas are fruit. They have too much sugar in them. And I wouldn't eat it because it was too high in calories and too starchy. But if I wanted a banana, I would deny myself eating the banana. And you know what I would end up eating instead? Cookies. I mean, why do we do that stuff? And that's just a crazy example of how we have this mentality that one food isn't good enough for us, but then when it comes down to it, we actually eat something else, which is worse for us in the process, just because we think that we need to be perfect in the first place. And so if I had eaten the banana, I probably wouldn't have wanted the cookies because the banana was what I wanted in the first place. Now, was she right that lunch meat isn't the best option? That it can have preservatives and nitrates? Sure. But was it also a better option than what she was currently doing, which was overeating pizza? Absolutely. And so the objection here is that it's not good enough. And whatever small incremental change that we're making just isn't enough of a change. We want to be the overnight success, right? Because we know where we want to go. And we see this compromise as something less than what we need or what we're capable of. Now, I think this originates from us thinking one of two different things, that we can do more, or maybe that it's going to take too long to get the results that we're looking for. And so here's what I want to suggest, is that you didn't get into your current shape overnight. And so therefore, it's not going to go away overnight either. Now, I get it. When we decide that we want something, like to lose weight, we want it the next day, right? We want it yesterday, in fact. But science proves over and over and over again that slow, methodical weight loss is most effective and longest lasting. And it takes a bit for our body to adjust hormonally to what's happening. And it takes a little bit for our brains also to catch up to our new way of doing things. When we lose weight through methods like fad diets that work quickly, our brains don't have enough time to catch up to the new way of thinking, the new way of doing things. And effective habit change comes from changing our beliefs about foods, our bodies, and the world around us. And that stuff takes time to sink in and really take over. Because we've been thinking this way for, some of us 50 years. And so it's not going to change overnight. It's going to take some time. It's why people who do fad diets, who do lose the weight, tend to regain it over the period of the next 5 years. And so what's the rush in getting the weight off? By doing these small changes that aren't perfect by any means, but are good enough, we can move towards becoming healthier. Doing things like drinking diet soda instead of full sugar soda. Eating, for example, 2 pieces of pizza instead of 4. Or walking 15 minutes a day to start instead of an hour. Now, another one of my clients who I presented the idea of B- habits to immediately said, nope, that's not going to work for me. And I was like, well, why not? And she said, well, because B- work is so close to A work, why wouldn't I just do the A work? Now, here's the thing about being a perfectionist or doing A work. We never think that we're doing enough. And it's just more of the quote unquote, I'm not good enough narrative that we have going on in our heads. This is just another way that it plays out. So first of all, I want to be clear. None of us are actually getting a grade in our health. There's no teacher in the universe that's telling us what grade we're getting, right? And at best, our health would be a pass-fail, and the tests that our doctors run would be the indication of that, whether we're passing or whether we're failing. So that being said, as we go through our health journey, what we consider to be B- quality, as we become more skilled in honing in on what habits work for us, will actually change. As we practice and experiment with different ways of eating, different physical activities, learning how to manage our stress and how much sleep we need, we will get better at zeroing in on exactly what we need to feel good, what we need to do to feel energized, limit cravings, have a stable mood, and consistent sleep. When we take the pressure off of weight loss and focus in on the other health-related non-scale victories, we will become more motivated to keep going and doing what works for us and our bodies. And that motivation is actually the next objection that I get from folks, that performing at a B- level just isn't motivating enough, and that it's so super close to what we're doing already that we can't really see enough of a change in our habits to keep us focused on it. And now I totally get this. We want to see quick wins when it comes to our goals. But as I said before, drastic changes aren't sustainable. But the other thing I'd like you to entertain is the idea that maybe B- habits will actually get you to your goal, that where going all in actually doesn't, at least not in the long term. Now, that being said, there's actually another really good reason why we don't want to go all in on doing all the things when it comes to our health, or rather weight loss. And that is that when we start a weight loss program, eventually we're going to plateau. It's just inevitable. If we start out doing all the things, when we hit a plateau, because we are going to, we have nowhere else to go. We have no more tricks up our sleeve, no more cards to play. We have nothing left to do. If we start out by reducing our calories, let's say to 1,200 calories per day, and exercising an hour a day, when we hit that plateau, what are we going to do? Are we going to cut more calories? Are we going to exercise longer? No, we are completely tapped out. We have no more energy to do anything more. By doing the bare minimum in order to get the results that we seek, what happens is we have a little bit of wiggle room. We can do the next hard thing, cutting out soda, for example, or increasing the amount of activity that we're doing on a daily basis, or maybe just adjusting where we're eating most of our calories so that they fuel our workouts. If we hold back from doing it all at the beginning, we can work into gradually adding more advanced techniques without feeling deprived, or that it's all too hard. Now, here's how B- health works. What I want you to do is, I want you to write out all of the things that you want to be able to accomplish. So again, go into the future and figure out what it is that you're doing in the future that's going to sustain whatever your goal is. So when you look into the future and you see that version of yourself that is the weight that you want to be, or that is at goal and feels amazing, what are the habits that you are doing during that time of your life that you need to get to? So write all of those down. What is it? Is it that you should stop drinking soda? Do you think that you should be eating more vegetables? Do you think that you should be walking or running? What are all of the things that you want to be doing when you think about the future version of yourself who is that healthy person that you strive to be? So write it all out. What are all the things that you need to do in order to get to that version of yourself? Next, what I want you to do is look at the list and choose the low-hanging fruit. What is the easiest thing to do? And maybe you even need to break it down a little bit. So the easiest thing to do might be just adding another serving of water to your day, or swapping 2% milk for whole milk in your coffee. Or it might be having one more serving of vegetables today than you did yesterday. So write out a list of all the things that you think you need to be doing in order to be that healthy version who you strive to be in the future. And what I want you to do is whatever will nudge you a little bit more towards your goal. Now, here's the thing. Going back to my client's objection that B- work is so close to A work, why wouldn't I just do A work? Because A work is going to get me there faster and it's just a little bit more. What I want to suggest to you is that over time, your B- habits will change. What you consider to be B- today will eventually become C or D work, and it will become easy, almost like you're not doing anything, like you're not even trying. By doing B- work, by doing the next easy thing on your list, what's going to happen is over the course of time, the quality of what you consider to be B- work is actually going to get better. So the goalpost of what is good enough is constantly moving. And I want to suggest that when it comes to B- habits, that the goalposts are always moving as well. So now you might look at me and think that I have the perfect diet, right? You might think that I eat perfectly. I mean, I've had practice for a number of years. And see, the thing is that I don't think that I do. I don't think that I eat perfectly. And honestly, I don't even know what eating perfectly means. Just like you, I think that I have room for improvement as well. I mean, we always have room for improvement. Our brains are constantly telling us that we're not doing enough. We need to do more, that we're not good enough. We need to do better. And it's something that is constantly a work in progress. So if we're always trying to do a little bit better, those B- habits will slowly get better and better and better over time. And this is exactly why it works. This is exactly why this technique is brilliant. Because we don't even see that we are trying. We don't see the needle moving. It's not super uncomfortable, and we can ease into better health. Now, here's the tricky thing about easing into better habits. Because it's easy, we forget. We don't remember how things used to be. So it's easy to give up thinking that we haven't made progress. We always see how much further we have to go, and we forget how far we've come. We don't see all of the changes that have happened, the progress that we've made, but it's all there. And so if you can just focus on how do I do things just a little bit better, you'll actually get to your goal. And in the process, you are going to be so much more compassionate with yourself. You are going to not see your failures as epic evidence of why you're not capable of achieving your goal, or why you're not destined to be a healthy person, or why this is another thing that just didn't work out. When we focus on B- work every single day, it gets easier and easier and easier. And that's really the key to success, the confidence-competence loop. That as we become more competent, we build confidence. And when we feel confident, we follow through on the thing, which breeds competence. And it just keeps going over and over and over again. When we let ourselves off the hook of having to be perfect, when we can allow ourselves to have compassion for the humans that we are, then we are going to be successful. Because humans aren't perfect. We as humans are not measured by how perfect we are. Okay, so I hope that this has given you some new ideas of how you can implement B- health for yourself. And I want you to try it out and let me know how it's going. Okay? Okay. So that's all I have for you today. Have an amazing week, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for listening. If you're done with dieting but still want to create healthy habits that are simple, easy to do, and sustainable, I've got an amazing resource for you. The 8 Basic Habits That Healthy People Do guide and checklist has everything you need to get started. And if you do these 8 things, not only will your body right size, but you'll probably be healthier than most people you know. To get your copy of the guide and checklist, go to elizabethsherman.com/habits to get started today. That's elizabethsherman.com, HABITS. See you next week.